My name's Jacob Palin, and this is my first game that I named Bob that I made in my first semester at the GIM program at Boise State University. A few of the features that I added to my game is I made it so you can only shoot in the direction you're facing, and there's a melee that has a cooldown on it, so you can't just spam it, but the shooting you can spam as much as you want. There is an enemy. He will chase me until a certain distance when he'll stop and then shoot at me, and then he'll get destroyed after 2 hits, as you just saw there. These are enemy spawners. In a certain distance from them, they will start spawning enemies, and they'll keep spawning enemies. And if I shoot them 4 times, they'll be destroyed. If the player doesn't have ammo, he can't shoot. But when you pick up ammo, now you can shoot and you can see it's counting down. The boss that I made, he has 2 attacks. One is a ranged and one is a melee. There's the ranged attack. It spawns above the player on an empty game object that follows the player. And then you can see on the sides, there's little portals that you can jump into to go to the top and the bottom. And you saw there, that was his melee attack. The boss has a few different line of sights, which I can show here. This is his following range. If the player is in this range, the boss will follow the player. And this is the ranged attack. When the boss sees the player inside this range, it will trigger the ranged attack. Once that happens, he will continue moving until he gets into this range, which is his melee casting range. And this is the hitbox of the melee. When I kill the boss, it will play a death animation. And at the end of the death animation, it will play this method that loads the winning scene. Instead of just when he dies, it will immediately load the winning scene. So there's a little bit of downtime between when the player kills the boss and when it says the player has won. And if I move to the scripts, in the shoot script, you can see here in the if statement, this is what determines where the player can shoot. So it tells the code if the player is facing right, then they can only shoot to the right. If they're not facing to the right, then they can only shoot to not the right, which would be the left. This is the enemy spawner script. Checks in the update method if the player is in range of the enemy spawner. Keep spawning enemies until it's either destroyed or the player exits the line of sight. And then enemy collision. I had initially wanted to make it so the enemy would not have any effect after it's dead, because currently if you try to walk over the enemy and it's still doing its death animation, then you'll take damage. But then I decided to keep that. Since it's like a slime, it makes it seem like it's a pile of toxic waste, and if you step on it, you'll take damage. For the boss movement down here in the update, or it tells the boss to look for the player, and if it's within line of sight, greater than the melee range and greater than the cast range, then it will keep moving towards the player. And up here, because there was a little bit of issues with the boss not moving from the cast range since it was so large, so I made it so an empty game object spawns somewhere in the game space when the ranged attacks is used, checks if that game object is active, and sets the cast range to 0. Otherwise, it'll be at its normal size. And the game object is on a timer, and it will be destroyed when that timer's up, which will then turn the casting range back to normal. And then the boss will use his casting attack, and then he'll keep moving. And that's how I was able to do 2 attacks, which took me a while to figure out.